When we built this new house for Charlotte and the family, we put it in the Parade of Homes one year. And Rulinda, my daughter, was the decorator of it, and up to her usual level of perfection, why she did a wonderful job with it. Put a little one room down there for grandkids, had their handprints all over the tile, fired into tiles, and with their names on them, and just a real cute room that had a swing in it and had a little dollhouse built inside of it. Anyway, it won first place in the Parade of Homes, 1994. And I'd had a sign made which said on it, "The house that Charlotte built for Jack." And so we had that house hanging there. Had that sign there, "The house that Charlotte built for Jack." And had hundreds of comments of people that were going through the home. When it was on the Parade of Homes, why lots and lots of people would go through, and had that sign there, and people would say, "Well, did Charlotte build this house?" And I'd say, "Yep, Charlotte built this house." Had one guy that came out of the house about the end of the parade, and there'd been 3,000 or 4,000 people through, and I was about tired of seeing people go through the house, and Charlotte was really tired of having them traipse through her house. And I stand out on the front porch, and it was about the end of the last day, and we had put in the house, in the home, an Aggie room that had a lot of Aggie memorabilia, championship basketballs that where they'd won tournaments or beat Ohio State in the NCAA, or in their footballs of winning the region or the PAC Athletic Association in Las Vegas and so on. Had a lot of fun stuff down there, all Aggie stuff. And I stand on the front porch, so happy to see people leaving, and this guy came up and he put his arm up his hand on my shoulder, and he said, "Jack, aren't you a cougar?" And I said, "What do you mean a cougar?" "Well, didn't you go to BYU?" And I said, "Yeah, I did. I did my undergraduate work at BYU." He says, "What are you doing with all that damn Aggie stuff down in your house?" And I hadn't even thought about offending some people that might be BYU people that went through the house, and they somehow or other knew I went to BYU. And here I've got this room full of all this Aggie memorabilia. Anyway, that home's had a lot of fun, and it was Charlotte's house that she built for me, and really it was that way because I never would have spent that kind of money on a house. We started out in a little house of 888 square feet, and we had 4 children, and at that time, and I was so worried about whether I could make a $72 a month payment on a house I'd paid $13,900 for. And I walked the floor for a week or two trying to figure out, can I really make a $72 payment? And then it dawned on me that it had an empty basement, unfinished basement. And so I finished the basement. I put 2 bedrooms and a bathroom and kind of a makeshift kitchen in the basement. And I rented it to 4 boys, students at Utah State, for $25 a piece. And that was $100 I had coming in off of my little 880 square foot house. And I had $100 coming in. I only had a payment of $72. So I was doing great, but here's Charlotte crowded in up on the main floor, three bedrooms, tiny bedrooms, one bath, raising these 4 kids. I was not very considerate to my wife. All I was thinking of is, how am I going to pay for this house? And so I turned it into a rental unit in the basement. We lived upstairs. That lasted a couple years, and then finally I realized that I should be more kind to my family, and so we ended up buying the Bell House out in Hyde Park, and we paid $42,000 for that house. And that's the one that we raised our family after those few years. But anyway, I think of the little house, 575 Douglas Drive. I kept that home as a rental until in the 80s I had it paid off. I bought it in 1959, and so we lived in it 20, I guess, let's see, we lived in it until 64, so there'd be 4, 5, it'd be 15 years, I guess, we lived in that house. Is that right? 60, 70, yeah. No, that's not right. No, we only lived in it 5 years. 5 years, yes. But I kept it as a rental, and finally got it all paid for, and then I got under some pressure when the 80s came along, and I had to sell that house. But I did, and got me out of trouble. Well, no, I didn't either. With that house, I sold it for $39,000. I'd paid $13,900. So I made enough money that I bought Rulinda a used car. She was 16 by that time. Yeah, she was 16 by that time. I bought her a new car. Not a new car, a used car. And I bought me a new car. The only new car I've ever owned in my life, even though I was an automobile dealer for many years. I bought me a new Lincoln, all with electric windows and radio, and had all of the latest stuff on it. I got to tell you how I bought that car. I went to the Lincoln dealer and I said, how much do you usually make on a car? And he said, why do you ask? And I said, I want to buy a new car from you, and I want to know what you normally make on an average deal. In those days, he says, we try to make $800 a car. And he said, we probably average that on our new cars. And I says, how about if we do a deal? How about if I give you $1,000 and then you let me order whatever kind of a car I want to from the factory, and you're going to make more than you would normally make on a car, and I'm going to be able to get a really nice car with a lot of extra. I had leather seats in it, it had electric windows and air conditioning, and it's got all the latest things on it. And he says, well, that sounds kind of good in one way, but he says, we generally make more money in that on an expensive car than that. And I says, I'm giving you $200 over what you normally make. And he says, yeah, but that car, you've got a whole lot of extras on that car. And I says, well, how do you feel about it? Is it okay? And he says, all right, we'll do it, Jack. So I gave him $1,000 over what it cost me, and at that time that car cost, I think it was about $13,000 by the time I had all the stuff on it. anyway, so I took the money from the sale of this house, bought me the new car, well, bought Rulinda a car. I bought a couple of houses, either a duplex or can't remember exactly what else I bought. But anyway, I spent that money. First time I'd really taken any money for myself to have fun with. And that's the only new car I've ever bought. I've had 100 cars, but I've always bought used cars or wrecked cars or salvage cars and fixed them up. And I'm driving a Jaguar, 2000 Jaguar S Series car right now that I paid $15,000 for out of Florida. And it had been a car that had been wrecked in the back, but the front part of the car and the engine and everything were perfect. So I paid $15,000 for it. No, I paid $1,500 for that car and shipped it up here. Put a new what they call clip on it, and I'm still driving today, and it was about a $60,000 car. Anyway, fun deals. I have some old cars around. I have a garage that holds about 2, 4, 5 or 6 cars, and I have an old Corvette that is it only has 33,000 miles on it. It's a 1930. No, I'm sorry. It's a 1980 Corvette, kind of a Batman and Robin car. It has the big wing fenders on it and so on. I have another Jaguar that is a Roadster that only has 13,000 miles on it when I bought it. 17,000 miles on it when I bought it, and it was a anniversary car that a man had bought for his wife, and this is a 12-cylinder Roadster convertible, beautiful car, and I have that. That is kind of my prime one. I like to get it out on the road and open it up. It just starts to run really good when it gets up to about 110 miles an hour. Anyway, I keep that. I don't drive it very much. Don't drive any of them. I have my dad and mom's 1977 Lincoln Town Car that only had 44,000 miles on it. It's a huge, big car that you can put 4 people in the front seat and 4 people in the back. You can put 8 people in there.
Where do you keep all your cars?
I just keep them in this shop that I have there. And I start them maybe once a year or something like that. I have an Oldsmobile that only has 74,000 that I bought from one of my agents who had a preem condition. I have a Chrysler. that is bought from James Chung, who's another one of my salespeople that I should talk about because he had a remarkable life. I bought that after he died. And anyway, that's pretty much kind of some of the stuff I've hung into.
Tell us why you have this thing for cars. I mean,
well, I've been in the car business for a lot of years. When I was a young kid, I was raised in the car business. We had the Mercury Lincoln dealership. We had the Ford tractor dealership. And so I've been in the machinery business, and I've been in 30 some odd different businesses from the time I was a little kid, and cars were always something were exciting to me. The first car I remember we ever got was a 1936 Ford, brand new, in Ordway, Colorado. And that car cost us a brand new four-door Ford, cost us $600. And the next car we got was in 1939, and we paid $900 for that. That was a Chevrolet four-door. And the next car we got, I'm talking about my dad and family, is we got a Buick. And so I don't remember all the cars we had, but I've had a little fascination for them. I've worked on them. I've done, when I was in the Army, I did repair on cars and timed them for the officers, and I made money on the side because I knew how to change the spark plugs, and I knew how to change the new timing lights and time the cars for them. They thought I was a great mechanic because I was this kid that knew a little bit about cars. Anyway, cars have been just kind of fun to me, but I've never owned a new car other than that Lincoln town car. Well, no, not the town car, the Lincoln that I bought when I sold my first house. Okay, I guess that I probably have an affinity for cars and real estate. I bought a lot of houses, and built a lot of houses. We built over 1,500 homes, and in fact, I was just looking at this. I just got my tax notice for this year, and these are the properties we're paying taxes on now. And there's I don't know how many here, a couple hundred, I guess. There's a page on there. There's another page. Another page. Another page. These left over. And these are scattered from Arizona to Oregon. We have one really nice place up in Oregon in the forest right at the foot of Mount Hood that I took in trade. I built a house for some people that wanted to move to Logan, and when we got their house all finished, they were going to sell their house up in Oregon, and they couldn't sell it. And yet their new house was finished, and they didn't have money to pay the down payment or to pay me for the new house, and they wanted the new house. So I said, well, what have you got up in Oregon? And they told me their house was on 6 acres of ground, and it's on Highway 26, and right just 16 miles from the ski lodge and up on Mount Hood, and they told me how beautiful it was. It had a nice fishing pond, had its own it had its own spring, private water, and I thought, well, dang, if you can't sell that, maybe I'll just take that house and trade. And then it had a mortgage on it, so I had to assume the mortgage on it. But I just took that in trade and gave them credit for their equity in it, and they're in their new home still today. And I've still got their house up in Oregon, and I've got it rented, and I've had it rented for probably 20 years. And it was probably only worth $350,000 or something at that time. It's probably worth, I don't know, $800,000-900,000 now. It's just gone. But houses go up in value, and if you keep them rented, other people are paying for them, and the taxes on them are, I don't know what the taxes are in that house. about $8,000. I don't even know. I hate to look at these taxes. That's the one thing I don't like. Anyway, oh, here it is. No, that's not it. I don't know. We're not going to take time to find out. Probably 8,000 or 9,000 a month. A year.
Jack, what's the difference in the house prices when you started building houses versus now?
I'll tell you. The first homes that we started building in about 1972 or somewhere there. The first subdivision I did, I bought 18 homes around the cemetery, 18 lots around the cemetery in Smithfield, and I paid $1,800 a lot for those lots. And the houses, and we built just small little homes, but we sold those homes for $14,000, $15,000. We finished the basement. We charged $400 a bedroom for finishing a bedroom downstairs. And those same houses today, we now are reselling those homes for $325,000. And I built all those houses for around $15,000 a house. Sold them for that. Now, if I'd have kept a bunch of those, I'd even have more houses than I got. But I got plenty. I got a lot of them. But that's what real estate does for you. And if you put a renter in it and they make the payments, you're through after you once make the down payment. And I took a lot of houses in trade. I used to do that. I would build, like the one I just told you about, the Oregon house. I'd build a home for somebody and tell them if they couldn't get their house sold, if we couldn't sell it for them by the time their new house was done, I would buy their house and give them their equity towards their new one. And sometimes we couldn't get the house sold, so I ended up with a house. And that's probably the best deals I've ever made is end up with another house and have people that are thrilled with their new house, and they didn't have to move out and move into a rental while their new house was being built, or they just moved from their house into their new house, and they gave me the deed to their house, and I gave them credit towards the new house, and they're happy, and I'm happy, and the people who rent from me, they're happy. Everybody's happy, except when you get tax time. That's the time that you say, oh dang, I got so much stuff here that how am I going to pay my taxes? One year sometimes I have to sell a house just to pay my taxes. So it's not always fun, but it's worth it.
Jack, can you tell the quick story about your dad and you, how you were selling cars and then you came home and they had depreciated, so that how you decided to sell houses?
Oh, yeah. Haven't I ever told you that story?
Probably, but let's tell it again, just in case.
We were in the farm machinery business out in Roosevelt, and we sold tractors and balers and farm equipment. We also had the GMC truck franchise, and we had Mercury Lincoln franchise, and we had a tire capping business also. People don't even know what tire capping is now, but we used to put retreads of rubber on old tires, and they'd run for another period of time. But so we did a lot of business with the Indian people and who were in the Uinta Basin and the farmers out there, and we had a reasonably good business. We had a service station, a garage, and we had, as I mentioned, tire capping business, and we had the car dealership and the truck, and we had the machinery business. And so anyway, we were on, I remember on a particularly cold January morning, my dad and I were out walking along in front of our car lot and machinery business. We owned about 2/3 of a block there, and we had cars all parked there, and there was about 6 inches of snow on the fenders, and my dad turned to me and he says, "You know, son, those cars there, every one of them are going down $1 a day in depreciation." And he said, "Those balers over there, we got to bring them in the spring and polish up the knotters because they'll be rusted from the winter. We won't get any more out of them than if we'd have sold them at a discount last year." He says, "We got to find something that appreciates or goes up in value while we're asleep instead it goes down in value, because it's costing us money every day that they sit on the lot here and they depreciate." And I counted, we had about 60 vehicles there at that time, and I just thought in my mind, $1 a day, that's $60 a day. These things are going down in value. And you got to sell them pretty fast with some profit in them to keep from going broke or going down. And we didn't know what that was. We didn't know what appreciated or what that even meant, but we knew that if we didn't keep turning our vehicles and our tractors and selling them, that they kept costing us more money just sitting there. So we got an opportunity, though, to trade our business for a lodge in Logan, Utah. That lodge had a nice restaurant in it, had a 21-unit motel. We'd had a lot of experience, not a lot, but my dad and mom had helped Uncle Harold and I build Jacob Lake in the early years down on the north rim of the Grand Canyon. I'd worked there 6 summers when I was 12 to 18 years of age, before I went on my mission, and I'd learned how to run the service station, and I'd learned how to wash dishes, and I'd learned how to make beds, and I'd learned all about the motel business and cooking. Anyway, so we decided that we would rather have that lodge, that motel and restaurant, than we would all these cars and all the equipment that we had in the garage. So we just traded that to a man out of Texas who owned the lodge and called Xanadu Lodge in Logan. In fact, here's a sign of it right here that somebody brought me. Xanadu Lodge. That was the sign out in front of the lodge up the canyon. Anyway, so we moved from Roosevelt, both our families, to Logan and started to run Xanadu Lodge. Along came a man after we had about 11 acres of ground there, and in walked a fellow one day that said, "I represent UDOT." And I says, "Who's UDOT?" And he says, "It's Utah Department of Transportation." And he says, "We want to build a new road going to Bear Lake." And I said, "Okay, how does that affect us?" And he says, "Well, we're going to need some of your land down here west of your motel, and because we want to put the road right through there and in front of your place, And so we're going to need to have about 2.5 acres of that ground for the new road. And of course, then we said, well, who pays this? How much is that worth? How much are you going to give us for that land? And he said, well, we'll just have to have it appraised, and whatever it's worth is what we'll pay you. And I said, well, this is a piece of ground that is private property inside of a forest service. There's forests all around it. There isn't any other comparable type of property that's private inside of a public forest. How do you know what the value is? And he says, well, we'll just have it appraised. We'll let you know. So a few days later, a fellow out of Logan who was the county surveyor was a good friend of ours, and he used to come up there and have scones. We served what we called Xanacones. They were just scones, and people would have a drink with them, coffee or whatever. And and he used to come up and became a good friend, and I knew that he was a surveyor for Cache County. So I said to him one day, I said, Irwin, how do you know what the value of a property is? The highway department wants some of our ground, and how do we know what to charge for it? He said, well, they'll just have it appraised. And I said, well, how do you appraise something that doesn't have a lot of comparables, or any comparables? And I told him about our ground, and he knew about it. And he said, well, he says they make adjustments. They make adjustments depending. He says no two properties are exactly alike, and so you have to compensate or adjust for the difference of different properties. And I said, what do you mean? I don't understand. He says, well, like a piece of farm ground is not worth as much as a subdivision ground where they're going to build houses on it. A residential area isn't worth as much as a commercial area where you put commercial buildings on it. So you adjust for those differences. Well, when Irwin left, I went and told my dad. I said, Dad, Irwin Moser was up here, and he said that if you had a subdivision, it would be worth more than just a piece of raw land. And my dad said, well, how do you get a subdivision? And I said, I don't know. He said, well, next time he's up here, ask him. Next time Irwin came up, I said, Irwin, tell me about how do you get a subdivision? And he says, well, it's pretty simple. He said, you just draw it up on a piece of paper, take it over to the courthouse, and you record it. And I said, well, what does that cost? And he says, well, just depends on how big a deal it is, how big a subdivision. I said, well, could we have a subdivision down here in our horse pasture? And he says, well, yeah, you could. It's right along the road. And I said, well, how much would that cost? Could you do that? Could you make us a subdivision? He said, yeah. He says, I guess I could do that, he says. And I said, well, that cost us. And he said, oh, probably $175. And so when he left, I tell my dad, Irwin says you can do a subdivision down there for $175. Dad said, well, tell him to do it. And so we asked Irwin to do the subdivision, and he drew it up. And a couple weeks later, well, here comes the UDOT right-of-way guy again, and he says, well, we're getting about to the point we want to start that road, and he says we need that land. And I said, well, what are we gonna, how much are we gonna get for our land? And he said, well, we talked about $11,000. And I said, yeah, I know that's what you said, but you're going right through my subdivision down here. And he says, there's no subdivision there. And he pulled out his plat and laid it out. He said, all that is just a piece of land down there, no subdivision. And I reached down under the counter and I unrolled the one that Irwin had made for me. It showed 11 lots there. And I said, no. I said, mine shows there's 11 lots down there. And he said, I'll never forget this. He says, what do you, he used a little stronger language. He said, what in the hell are you trying to pull, Nixon? And I said, well, we're not trying to pull anything. We just want to get a fair price for our land. And he was mad. And he just picked up his stuff. He didn't even put it in his briefcase. He just picked up his plat and he says, we'll see you in court. We'll condemn that land. Boy, I was scared. And I went back and found my dad and I said, looks like we're in trouble. They're going to condemn our land and take it away from us. And anyway, my dad said, just calm yourself, son. Let's see what happens. And that next Friday night, we had some customers that used to come every Friday night and eat steaks at our restaurant. And they were important people in Logan. One was a general contractor, two of them were contractors. One was the president of the Chamber of Commerce, and one was a county commissioner. They and their wives used to come up every Friday night, and we sit at the table for them, and they ate at the same table, and they'd eat the same kind of steaks every Friday night, and we'd have the best kind of meat we could, and really took care of them because they were regular clients. Well, here they come on this Friday night, and they came in and their wives went and sat down, and then the husbands went and sat down. But one, Goldie Butters, he's standing there in the doorway and he saw me over at the cash register. And he said, Nixon, used a few words, vernacular words like hell and damn and so on. He said, you're trying to stop this road going through here. And he says, we're not going to stand it. You want too much money for your land, and we're not going to do that. I'm going to close you down. I'm the president of the Chamber of Commerce. And he says, I'll send out notice to all the people that we don't do business with you up there because you're standing in the way of the road progress to Bear Lake. And everybody could hear him. I mean, he had a big barrel chest, and he's loud, and he had a big head and a neck, and he was all you could see he was all excited and angry. And he coming over to me, and I'm just this little runt sitting here at the cash register, and he's my client, and he's telling everybody he's going to close us down. And I thought, I said, no, Goldie, please, we want the road. We don't want to stop. You're asking too much for your land, and that's going to stop the road program and the highway. And anyway, I said, please, no, we want the road. We want to cooperate. So he finally went over and sat down, and my dad was in the back washing dishes. And we had a little hole in the doorway that we used to pass the dirty dishes back along a railing where he was washing dishes back there. And I went back in the kitchen and I says, Dad, we're in trouble. And I says, Goldie Butters just said he was going to close us down. And my dad says, yeah, son, I heard him out there. And I says, we got to just give them whatever they want. We can't do that. He'll put us out of business. And my dad, in all his wisdom, put his hand on my shoulder. He says, "Son, just calm yourself. I think we're on to something here." And I was shaking and saying, "Let's do whatever they want. Just calm yourself, son. I think we're on to something here." Anyway, we ended up getting 33,000 instead of 11,000. Now, with the story in Roosevelt, with the cars going down $60 a day, the knotters getting rust on them and having to paint them up and to polish them up and to bring them in, try to sell them the next season, interest you're paying on the loans. All of a sudden I saw we made 300 times what we were offered for $175. $175 changed the use of that property from 11,000 to 33,000. Now, a light went on in my head. I'm up here mopping floors till 1 o'clock in the morning. I have to be here at 6 in the morning for the breakfast run, so I hurry home and I get 5-6 hours sleep. Never see my kids, never see my family hardly. And I just made 300% more for $175. There's better ways to live than the way I'm living. So that turned me on to real estate. I mean, I started investigating real estate. I went ahead and got my license. My dad, we sold Xanadu, and that's another wonderful story and fun story about that deal. But anyway, we got our real estate licenses and started a new industry. And since then, now I pay a lot of taxes, lots of taxes. But we got a lot of assets. So that's kind of an interesting story about depreciation and appreciation, or changing the use of something and turning it into something valuable, and instead of just watching it depreciate on you.